truck driver who plowed his rig into a festive holiday crowd in Berlin, killing at least 12, may still be on the loose. A look at the connection between gum disease and rheumatoid arthritis. And a photographer documents inequality in South Africa. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Now tonight we begin in Germany, where the citizens of Berlin are in shock Tuesday after police say a truck driver deliberately slammed his truck into a crowded open air market Monday evening, killing at least 12 people and injuring nearly 50 others. The crash happened outside the landmark Kaiser Wilhelm Memorial Church as Germans celebrated the Christmas season with traditional outdoor festivities. Police say the truck was loaded with steel beams when it careened into the crowd, traveling in excess of 60 kilometers an hour. The Polish owner of the truck, which had Polish license plates, says it may have been hijacked from a relative. Now, police are calling the crash a suspected terror attack. The White House offered its condolences in a statement that condemned what appears to have been a terrorist attack. For more details on the tragedy, journalist Brandane O'Shea joins us live via Skype from Berlin. Good evening, Brandane.
Good evening, Vincent. Nice to be with you.
Not so bad over here. Can you just start by filling us in on what is the latest in Berlin?
Right. Well, the latest has been a very curious day here in Berlin because for most of the day, most of us have been under the impression the police actually captured the suspect last night. But it now appears that the man that they've had in captivity since the incident last night, it's a 23-year-old Pakistani, is actually not the person responsible for this attack. Now, there were two people in the cabin of that truck. It veered into what's called Christmas markets here, exactly as you described, these outdoor events. Very famous place right in the heart of Berlin, underneath that church that you mentioned, the Kaiser Wilhelm Memorial Church, which is a church that's all about peace. It's been set up by the Berliners. Basically, the steeple was missing. They never had it repaired or restored in that way. And this particular area is an area of peace.
Now we know that this is the beginning of that season where so many Germans have this kind of outdoor markets. What are security officials saying they're going to do to ensure that people can go on with their lives?
Correct. Well, of course, today, interior ministers and various people have been discussing the security at these markets. The fact of the matter is, Vincent, when one really looks at it carefully, there is no way to protect this. If we think about the market that was attacked last night, it is between two main streets. They're huge boulevards. It's right in the centre of town. It is the last place in the world that you would expect, a big sort of lorry or truck to come screaming along at 60, 70 kilometres an hour. And there's very little. Not really, or when you go in, you have to actually show your bags.
Yes, we lost you a little bit there. Just in a few seconds, talk about the reaction from the citizens. We know that this is possibly a person from outside Germany. Has this caused any specific reactions from the Germans themselves?
I think what happened today, Berliners have woken up sad and somber. They are very, very concerned about what's happened to the city and that what's happened in their city, because we've been warned about it. I've been living in Germany for over 25 years. We have been warned that this might happen in one of these places, but nobody, or I think everybody, had hoped that this wouldn't happen. So you have a very, very somber Berliner. But of course, remember, Berlin is a particular city. It was this east and west. It was in the heart of the east and the west. It's been reunited now for over 25 years. And so the Berliners are already quite a robust and tough type of German. And I think that they're taking this as saying, OK, we're not going to be knocked down by this. We're going to get out there and still continue to do the things we want. But we're very, very sad about what's happened to our city.
Well, Brendan, thank you very much for your reporting.
Thank you, Vincent.
Now, that is journalist Brandane O'Shea reporting live via Skype from Berlin. Well, the United States is condemning the killing of the Russian ambassador to Turkey in Ankara on Monday. Officials have expressed condolences to the family of Ambassador Andrei Karlov and offered U.S. help in Turkish and Russian investigations of the shocking killing. Viewers Ladita Hoke has more.
Video footage shows a young man wielding a gun next to a body lying on the floor and shouting Allahu Akbar and messages about Aleppo and Syria. The suspected killer has been identified as a 22-year-old member of the Ankara riot police. It was not immediately clear if he had links to any group. Russian President Vladimir Putin called the killing a provocation aimed at derailing the ties between Russia and Turkey.
There's only one possible response to this, the strengthening of the fight against terror, and bandits will feel it themselves.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan agreed.
After the incident, during the talk with Mr. Putin, we agreed this is a provocation and there isn't any dispute.
Erdogan said the two countries will cooperate in the murder probe. Relations between Moscow and Ankara have been on shaky ground because of their different interests in Syria. Russia may try to use Karlov's murder to its advantage regarding Syria, says Russian military expert Alexander Goltz.
I think the killing of the ambassador may be used by Russia as another trump card at the next talks on Syria, because we can't ever leave aside the fact that our interests in Syria don't coincide with those of Turkey.
Russia supports President Bashar al-Assad, while Turkey supports the opposition. Relations were strained after Turkey downed a Russian warplane in Syria in November 2015. Turkey later apologized, and the presidents of the two countries have been in regular contact since then. On Tuesday, representatives of Russia, Turkey and Iran are set to meet to discuss the situation in Syria, where the forces of President Assad wrested control of eastern Aleppo from rebels. The United States has condemned Karlov's killing and offered condolences to his family and all the Russian people.
We stand ready to offer any assistance that may be required to Russia and Turkey as they investigate this despicable attack, which was, as the Secretary noted, also an assault on the right of all diplomats to safely and securely advance and represent their nations around the world.
U.S. officials declined to make any other comment on the killing before the investigation is over. Zlatica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
Now to Africa, where security forces in the Democratic Republic of Congo shot and killed several protesters who had gathered in the streets of Kinshasa on Tuesday to demand that President Joseph Kabila step down after his mandate expired overnight. Opposition leader Etienne Tshisekedi called on the Congolese people to peacefully resist Kabila. Now, no new elections has been set to pick a successor. Witnesses say at least 2 civilians were killed overnight when soldiers opened fire during clashes in the neighborhood of Kangabwa. With a ban on demonstrations in force and a heavy military presence, Kinshasa's normally busy main boulevard, while for the most part deserted. Congo has not had a peaceful transfer of power since independence from Belgium in 1960. Now, the question of Russian interference in the U.S. presidential election is likely to continue into the new year. But as we learned from VOA's Michael Bowman, a lack of consensus during this transition period could impact how America ultimately responds to major cyber attacks.
President-elect Donald Trump has publicly disputed U.S. intelligence assessments of Russia's cyber activities, something the current White House occupant finds perplexing.
Unless the American people genuinely think that the professionals in the CIA, the FBI, our entire intelligence infrastructure, many of whom, by the way, served in previous administrations and who are Republicans, are less trustworthy than the Russians, then people should pay attention to what our intelligence agencies say.
Some advising Trump say the case against Russia is not cut and dry.
The Chinese are good, and one of the things you do in cyber is try to look like somebody else. So to have your hacking look like somebody else's hacking.
We will reestablish the rule of law.
Democrats note Trump will have to rely on intelligence agencies when he becomes commander-in-chief.
For the president-elect to continue to give the Russians deniability is deeply damaging to the country.
I think Putin is evil. I think the Russians are guilty of incredibly evil hacking around the world.
But some Republican lawmakers complain the Obama administration has pointed fingers at Russia while providing no proof.
If they have evidence, show it. They have not shown it yet.
We will provide evidence that we can safely provide, that does not compromise sources and methods. But I'll be honest with you, when you're talking about cybersecurity, a lot of it is classified and we're not going to provide it.
Whatever evidence is assembled, a long-term response to Russian hacking, as well as overall U.S. cybersecurity, will fall to the Trump administration. Michael Bowman, VOA News, Washington.
Well, fewer journalists were killed in 2016 than the previous year. That's according to the nonprofit Committee to Protect Journalists. But the reasons that the death rate is down may not be reassuring. Here's VOA's Ramon Taylor.
Early in 2016, Voice of America lost one of its own. Freelance journalist Amigdad Mojali had been reporting on the humanitarian impact of the war in Yemen for 3 months with VOA when he was killed, on assignment, during a Saudi-led air raid. Mojali is one of 48 journalists killed throughout the year, either murdered, caught in crossfire or combat, or on dangerous assignment, according to newly released data by the Committee to Protect Journalists. While the overall number is a decline from previous years, Courtney Ratch, advocacy director for CPJ, told VOA via Skype that the reasons are not entirely clear.
One thing that you might extrapolate is that in certain conflicts it has gotten so incredibly dangerous for journalists that there are simply fewer people doing journalism.
Particularly in war-ravaged zones across the Middle East. More than half of those killed were on assignment in Syria, Yemen, or Iraq. Syria alone, the world's deadliest country for the 5th consecutive year, accounted for 14 deaths. But even in places where journalists are less likely to be singled out for murder, various forms of censorship or intimidation are prevalent, like Turkey, which accounts for nearly 1/3 of the world's imprisoned journalists, according to CPJ.
We see that conflict zones continue to be very deadly and dangerous for journalists, but we also see this repression happening, trying to silence critical voices by putting them in prison, cracking down on what they're saying and allowed to say on social media.
Journalism professor Steve Raymer explains via Skype that governments have found ways of censoring journalists that are less difficult, including Russia.
There hasn't been a murder of a journalist in Russia since 2013, according to this report, but Russia has enacted so much more legislation to silence journalists and silence critical voices that they don't need to kill people, that they don't need to murder journalists.
CPJ found that approximately 9 out of 10 journalists killed were local, not foreign, a statistic in line with historical trends. Political groups, among them Islamist militant organizations, were found responsible for more than half of all killings in 2016. Ramon Taylor, VOA News, New York.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. Check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Coming up, new research gives hope for the treatment of arthritis. Stay with us.
I wanted to present music and a side of American culture that is most important to me, that is a part of who I am. They're going to get some incredible performances. That's one of the things I love, bringing these artists in so you can get to see them do what they do. It's soul music, and that's what music is. It's that which comes from the soul.
Well, it's time for our health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Madu with a look at gum disease and arthritis. Hello, Lino.
Hello, Vincent. Researchers at Johns Hopkins University say a type of bacteria found in severe gum disease may trigger many cases of rheumatoid arthritis, an autoimmune disease caused when the body mistakenly attacks healthy tissue in the joints and sometimes around the heart and lungs. The bacteria is called Agregatibacter actinomycetum comitans, or AA for short. The researchers identified the bacteria in close to 50% of the patients with rheumatoid arthritis. The bacteria damages immune system cells called neutrophils, which then attacks them. They say it is the same process that appears to trigger the inflammation seen in rheumatoid arthritis. And while there is no immediate takeaway for patients who have rheumatoid arthritis, the researchers advise better oral hygiene. Now, in another research on arthritis, doctors in the Netherlands claim a new treatment could offer life-changing pain relief to thousands of people who suffer from arthritis. The treatment comes in the form of a tiny electronic implant, which is embedded under the skin. The vagus nerve carries messages between the brain and the body's major organs. The implant rests against the nerve in the neck, firing electrical impulses once a day for 3 minutes. The researchers say that's enough to reduce the activity of the spleen, which regulates the immune system. They say within days, the organ produces fewer chemicals and immune cells, which cause inflammation in the joints of people with arthritis. In some patients, swelling completely disappeared. Now it's time for our studio guest. Rheumatoid arthritis affects joint linings, causing painful swelling over long periods of time. And the inflammation associated with rheumatoid arthritis can cause bone erosions and joint deformity, among other things. Joining me for more on arthritis is Aida Murad, an advocate and a young woman living with arthritis. Ms. Murad, welcome to the show. So when we hear about rheumatoid arthritis, we think about the elderly, but in your case, you were diagnosed at the age of 20. What was it like?
It was very scary, and a lot of people didn't believe that I had rheumatoid arthritis, including myself, doctors, and some friends. They said, you're too young to have it. It just take some ibuprofen and brush it off. And 7 years later, I still have it.
And did you have some indications that something was wrong before the diagnosis?
I stopped being able to use my hands. So I said something's wrong. And then slowly it hit my feet, and then slowly my elbows, my chest.
And when you see that you have the pain, right, when you have flare-ups, as they call it, what is it like? Can you describe for us what it's like a typical flare-up?
So first I have bone erosion in my left hand, so it's been 2 years since I closed it, and that's very difficult. I have flare-ups in my chest, which feels like having a heart attack. I went to the ER telling them I have a heart attack, then they said, oh, you just have inflammation there. In my elbows, you can no longer do ordinary things such as dress up. If it's on your feet, you can't walk easily. And if it's on your back, you have to stay in bed.
But that sounds debilitating. How are you able to function? What is your treatment regimen like?
I've tried Eastern, Western medicine and functional medicine. So far, nothing has been sustainable. But first, I take care of my emotional health. I make sure stress hasn't caught up to me. I sleep enough. I eat very healthy. But then when I have flare-ups, I try to stay away from gluten. I take ibuprofen sometimes, and now I'm just trying some supplements to see if something works.
And you said you try to stay away from stress. Is stress one of the triggers, or I heard about the cold weather? Is that
cold weather definitely doesn't help, so I might migrate somewhere during the winter. But stress is definitely a flare-up for all illnesses. It lowers your immunity, so I try to maintain a fulfilled and as much as I can stress-free life.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting there. Because when you look at where we are in terms of treatment, research and development, in my reports earlier, I talk about some research. As a patient, someone who's living with arthritis, what do you think is still missing? What would you like to see?
The root causes of arthritis are not known. And finding that would, I think, help so many people. And then also raising awareness that there are many youth being affected with this, and it's rising. And then third is finding solutions without such serious side effects. That's why I stopped, for me personally, Western medicine, because they caused me serious side effects: headaches, nausea, dizziness, inability to focus. So finding the root causes.
Yes, so Western medicine didn't work for you, but it worked for other people, so it really depends.
Yes.
It's from patient to patient.
Exactly.
And now you are an advocate. What is the message? What kind of awareness are you trying to raise? I know you mentioned about the root causes, being able to find the root causes, but what is your message in general?
We have to take the full picture. You have to address the physical self, emotional, mental, and spiritual self, because they're all interrelated. So if you just address the physical, it's not going to be sustainable. And then second is just for people living with arthritis. I wish I could tell my younger self it's going to be okay. Even if you don't find the solution right now, you will. So be patient. And I'd like to work more with people to find sustainable solutions.
And quickly, in a few words, what is the most difficult living with arthritis?
Walking. And honestly, for me, it's being able to be vulnerable about it and tell people that I'm not doing well.
Well, Ida, we wish you all the best. We wish you strength and good health. Thank you so much for joining us. And that's Ida Murad. She's an arthritis patient and an advocate. And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter @LenorMoudou. Vincent, back to you.
Well, Lenore, thank you very much. Now remember to watch for Lenore Moudou every Tuesday and Thursday for the latest health news in Africa right here on Africa 54. It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, documenting South Africa's inequalities with drone technology. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In the DRC, gunfire erupts in several parts of the capital, Kinshasa, as the country's long-serving president, Joseph Kabila, appears to stay on despite the expiration of his mandate. In France, French President François Hollande and Senegalese President Macky Sall urge Gambia's President Yahya Jammeh to step down and turn over power to Adama Barrow. In Nigeria, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees visits Maiduguri in the northeastern part of the country on a final leg of a tour to the Lake Chad Basin. Finally, in Libya, authorities deport more than 100 African immigrants. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Haiti Adams-Fitzpatrick. Let's take a look at what's trending this Tuesday. Wearable technology is one of the top fitness trends for 2017. And here in the U.S., smart gadgets that help you stay healthy are among the most popular gifts this holiday season for the second year running. Now, we're talking all kinds of wearable technology: activity trackers, smartwatches, heart monitors, and GPS tracking devices. Demand for these items is growing so fast, the industry is expected to be worth $34 billion by 2020. Well, speaking of wearable gifts, if handbags are your thing, well, a South African startup is looking to influence fashion trends with an African handbag range. ATG Ikasi handbags come in bright and bold-colored African fabric, mostly sourced from Ghana. The fabric is usually combined with others like South Africa's isiXwexwe cloth that traditionally is worn by the Xhosa community. The fashionable bags have grown popular in the country over the years and continues to draw interest from visitors. Ikasi bags are also available in countries like Spain and Croatia. The bag creators are now working with new materials to accentuate their bags like beads, springbok hide and ostrich skin. And finally, it is officially holiday season for millions across the globe, and stocking up on your favorite drinks is probably a top priority for some of you. Well, one UK brewing company is using artificial intelligence to design beer that will perfectly match your taste. Well, the Facebook Messenger bot asks questions and learns from customer feedback. That information is then used to tweak the recipe. The algorithm took a year to build. It is designed to automatically update and adapt itself based on customer input. Each bottle of AI beer costs around $5.60, in case you were interested. And that is what is trending today. Vincent, back to you.
I'll take water, Adi. Well, an American photographer living in South Africa is capturing the country's stark inequalities through drone imagery. VOA's Emma Courtright spoke to him via Skype.
In his project, Unequal Scenes, Johnny Miller uses a drone to capture Cape Town's inequality from above.
I don't think you can live in Cape Town and not be aware that there's inequalities that exist here. When you drive in from the airport, you see the shacks on the side of the road. If you are an observant citizen at all, you'll see that there's vast inequalities in people's lived lives here and experiences and opportunities.
When Johnny Miller bought a drone 8 months ago, he was immediately struck by the device's ability to alter people's perspectives on their familiar surroundings.
Such a powerful tool. I thought it was a toy, but it's actually this really powerful tool that you can use to change people's perspectives on things they always thought they knew what it looked like.
Miller's project, Unequal Scenes, has garnered international attention. Though the bulk of Miller's project focuses on South Africa, he acknowledges that inequality is not unique to the nation. Miller has used his drone to photograph Nairobi and Mexico City.
The reason why this project has gotten so much global attention, I think, is because it speaks to much more than just racial disparities. It talks to how there's entire classes of people being disenfranchised through our economic systems and through the ways we construct our cities to benefit corporations.
Using South African census data, Miller was able to research where his drone might capture the most striking images. Miller's photography depicts Cape Town's methodical use of roads, train tracks, and rivers as tools for segregation.
You can look at maps, and I found these maps that show where people live, racially where people live, and it's very distinct. And I've also found maps that show how much people earn, and it's also very distinct, and those maps correlate to a high degree. So when you talk about economic disenfranchisement or terms like white privilege, that's really what I'm talking about.
Miller's photos are representative of a nation that, as he says, is thirsty to self-analyze. Over 2 decades after the end of apartheid, inequality is still rampant in South Africa.
The photos that I took seem to have captured some sort of zeitgeist, tapped into some sort of passion that South Africans are feeling right now about how their country hasn't progressed as far as they thought it would have 22 years after the fall of apartheid. So if you're asking me, did I expect to see what I saw? Yes. Did I expect the reaction? No.
For VOA News, I'm Emma Courtright, Washington.
And that's our show for today. Thanks. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Most people enjoy listening to music. But is this expression actually about songs and tunes?
Music to my ears.
Jonathan, I cannot believe we have to work over the weekend.
Did you not hear the news? The meeting for the project got canceled. No work this weekend after all.
Awesome! That is music to my ears. Now I'll have a chance to catch up on my latest book.
You say something is music to your ears when you hear good news or just news that makes you happy. Music is pleasant to listen to. That is where this expression comes from. In our example, learning that she didn't have to work on the weekend was music to Anna's ears. And that's English in a Minute.